Let me find out where is Nick. Now, so we are live. Thank you very much for waiting. I appreciate your patience. Why don't we start from the lower corner? Mr. Alex O'Brien, would you like us to tell, or would you please tell us who you are, what you do, and why we care what you have to say?
I'm Alex O'Brien. I grew up outside of Seattle, Washington. My hometown's in Washington. I am currently in Virginia. I work for Focused Fitness. And the reason you should probably be listening to what I have to say is because I was able to figure out how to get on this blab. I'm pretty stoked about it. No big deal.
Awesome. All right, Jorge Rodriguez, would you like to tell us?
Yes, sir. Okay, so I'm Jorge Rodriguez, as Justin so wonderfully put it. And I'm a PE teacher from Houston, Texas. And why should you be listening to me? I don't know. I'm going to give my opinion, and then you guys decide whether you want to take it or not. There you go.
You got that
Very
lean?
nice.
Oh, I should say also I'm on the Spark Guy team, because I just saw Kim's little bubble thing. So there you go.
See? This is a superhero. He's a superhero, folks. Absolute superhero. All right. And last, save the smartest for last. No offense.
No.
Alex and Jorge.
Right.
Tell us about yourself, sir.
My name is Aaron Beatley. I'm a faculty member in the University of Kentucky. I train teachers, write books, research, and all that fun stuff. Why you should listen to me is because I live with 5 women and no one ever listens to me.
We got to start at some point in time. Somebody's got.
But I know that I'm allowed to change my mind apparently, so that's a good thing.
There you go. Yeah, some call it wishy-washy, others call it learning and the growth mindset. All right, so we are here today because of an article that I read called "A Rose by Any Other Name: Physically Literate and Physically Educated, a Rose by Any Other Name," penned by Monica Lounsbury and Thomas McKenzie. So I read this article and I said, wow, this article is fantastic. Journal article out of, what magazine? I don't know. Some magazine that's important. Was it Joe Bird? Yeah, Journal of Sport and Health, Volume 4, Issue 2 in June 2015. So I read it and it kind of blew my mind a little bit. And I said, wow, this has about 4 billion points that I want to talk about. And who better to talk about than Aaron Bailey? Beatley? How do I say that?
Aaron's fine. It's pronounced Beatley, like BEAT-LEE.
All right, Beatley. I can remember that.
Yeah.
Aaron Beatley, of course, who is an expert in the field. So really thankful that he stayed up till 10:30. So first,
got some caffeine in me.
Let's talk about the transition from physically educated to physically literate. What do you know about the transition? How did it come about? Why did SHAPE decide that this was so important that they needed to do this?
The best way to describe it was fast. I think it happened. They were in the process, again, and others are more up to date on this than I am, but they were in the process of changing the standards down to 5. Is it 5 now? It was 8 and 7 and 6, and I think it's 5 now. And that's when all the impetus of it had been around. I think Whitehead had that paper. Gosh, what year was that? It was back in, I want to say 01 or 02. I mean, it's been a long time. And I think they just found the impetus. If we're going to change the standards, we can change from physically educated to physical literacy. Again, that's oversimplification. I'm sure there was a lot more that went into it, but it was very quick that it happened. Very quick.
Yeah, which absolutely amazed me because it seems like Shape America does nothing fast. It took them, I don't know, numerous years to hop on the social media bandwagon. Their webinars are just starting to kick off a little more now, at least that I say. Jorge, what in your opinion?
Well,
how did this happen?
Can I ask a quick question, Aaron?
Sure.
Yeah, I was just kind of wondering if you know like the history of the term physical literacy and how that kind of came about, and then so why Shape America would kind of move so quickly into like accepting that based on where the origins came from and the research behind that.
It started with gosh, is it Marilyn Whitehead? If she's listening or someone's listening, help me out. But that's where the term came from. We've written several papers on it and how it related to comprehensive school physical activity and things, but I don't know as much about. I know it's been adopted internationally a lot faster than it was the uptake in the U.S. But I don't know as much about. I don't think there's been much research on it per se. I know Dean Dudley's been putting on Twitter that he has a paper coming out that looks at some of these constructs with respect to validity and things like that. So I think it's starting to get the process going, but as Justin said, nothing ever happens very quickly. It's just so in essence, this could have been going on behind the scenes for SHAPE for a long time. But I mean, again, they changed their name, they changed 5 standards, and went on to physical literacy all at the same time. So that's as best I can tell you, Jorge. I don't think there's been a lot of research. It's just a lot of theoretical and thinking and that kind of thing.
Yeah, because even in the journal article that I was searching through, it says the term physical literacy originated in the UK and then went to Canada, and now appears in the US PE standards. But it doesn't even go into the history of it in the paper, which is a little interesting there.
No, and it's interesting because, again, for the longest time, that I've always said that physical education is to provide students with the skills, knowledge, and attitude to be active for the rest of their lives. And that's kind of, I mean, I know there's dispositions, there's different terms and things, but that's essentially what physical literacy is. And I guess in my mind, when you limit it to physically educated, that makes you think that it's just something that happens in physical education, whereas physical education is just part of making someone physically literate. Is that everyone else's understanding, or is that, I just don't think it's limited to physical education.
Physical education would be the process of educating myself over the course of taking X class, taking Y class, where physical literacy, at least in my interpretation of it, would be something that you obtain and you have the essential skills to be fit, healthy, and active for a lifetime. So I'm able to move on in the future beyond said PE class in whatever grade it is. So once I graduate 12th grade, I still have those fundamental skills to make conscious decisions to be, again, fit, healthy, and active for a lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense. And when we look at the paper, they actually sit there and define physical literacy and physically educated. But this dude, Paul Roter, do you know who that is? Anybody? He is something in SHAPE, the chief executive officer of SHAPE America. So that seems like a pretty high.
Yeah, he's chief in charge at SHAPE.
Yeah. So he says right here, when he was talking about it, and this is what I wrote in my paper too, is that he thought that people were confused when they say physically educated. They were confusing that with physical education, the class. And that was one of the big points on another reason why they changed it, is because people were just saying, oh, if you're physically educated, that's physical education, but they're not synonymous. And physically educated would be, like you were talking about, throughout your lifetime. And they're thinking physically educated is only when you're in school.
If you piggyback on that and you think of, I'm going to jump on the bandwagon early of the Every Student Succeeds Act. You have an opportunity to gain essential skills and knowledge to do something in a course. That's the objective of the course. There's no other course that I can think of, and help me out, that has educated in it. English educated, math educated, right? It's not this education piece. It's more of a literacy. It's more of a fundamental knowledge of that core subject. And I think that might have had some sort of a piece in the puzzle, maybe.
Yeah. Here's the quote right here. Although the case can be made that becoming physically educated in the broad sense is a lifelong endeavor, most people identify physical education as a subject area taught within the school curriculum.
Right. And
that was the basis of his paper. And what he said, this is why, one of the main reasons why we changed to physical literacy. Which,
well, this just, again, I know Kim has mentioned this on Voxer. I don't know what group it was, and I know other people. Mackenzie's talked about this. I've talked about this whole issue of physical literacy with Mackenzie as well, and all this goes back to the fact that we have never had an identity, and we keep jumping, and no one knows what the heck we do, and no one has any. That's why there's confusion of physically educated and physical education, the curriculum, and what is physical activity, and we've constantly had this lack of an identity, and we constantly change our identity, and we're constantly moving. And if we continue to do that, I think that's one of my concerns with taking on another term. I mean, people don't know what physically educated is. They're not going to know what physical literacy is. And, you sit on an airplane next to someone and they don't know what physical education is. And because frankly, we don't know what physical education is.
But doesn't kind of defining these terms and breaking it down a little bit to smaller pieces, doesn't that actually help, like define and kind of give us a direction? Wouldn't that actually help that?
Excuse me. From my perspective, I like the term physical literacy. I think it helps us to finally unify ourselves. We've been on these tangents where we'll be on movement education and then perceptual motor programs, and then we'll go into we're integrators. Oh, we're kinesiologists. What are we? And the physical literacy, I think, provides us with that. I think that's what you're alluding to, Jorge, that it at least gives us, and then underneath that umbrella term, we can start doing that. But we have to do that because we've jumped on these bandwagons before and we haven't done anything with it. We just, 5 years from now, I wouldn't be shocked if 5 years from now, no one talked about physical literacy. In the research world, who talks about the built environment anymore? That used to be a huge, built environment. That was going to change the world. And now it's not sexy. No one does the research for it. So we don't talk about that anymore. And it's one of these that maybe other fields are the same way. They just jump from topic to topic to topic. Yeah. But we have to stick to something, and maybe physical literacy will provide us an umbrella that we can move underneath that umbrella around to different points.
The pendulum of education is always going to swing. There's always got to be the hot new buzzword, the hot new term, and you can even bring that pendulum into the testing era. I mean, again, No Child Left Behind, boom, 2000 era, that comes around. Everything is very strict and rigorous, and there is a process and a protocol, and now the pendulum starts to swing the other direction, and now we come in this Every Student Succeeds Act where you have all of these, I compare it to the Title IX of sports. The girls and boys have equal sports. We all have the equal say in terms of our subject areas, and when you have an opportunity to cling to one of those pieces, sometimes we get caught up, and it's the flavor of the week. And physical literacy, Aaron, I'm 100% in agreement with you. When you talk about this could be something we could actually hold on to, as long as we're all on board. There's so much philosophy in physical education compared to other subjects. 2 + 2 is always 4 in math, right? I mean, an introductory sentence is always going to be correct or not correct in English, where we have so much more play in physical education that can get a little weird. And with that piece, I just have to give this plug. When 2 of the years I was teaching, I changed PE to living active. My class across the school in elementary was called Living Active. It was called LA. And that was simply because I gave a exit test to 4th and 5th graders, and the exit test was one question, and it was, what does PE mean to you? And I cried myself to sleep when I got some of the answers because they didn't know. And so I was like, okay, what's real to them? Living active. All right, let's go with it. And so if we as a profession can come under your umbrella like you were talking about, Aaron, I think that's the way we got to go.
Yeah, in the article, I mean, here's a direct quote. In response to the general education movement to emphasize morals, values, responsibility, respect for self and others, PE responded with the character education curriculum model. Then when general education and went to inquiry-based learning, team building, curriculum integration, PE followed again with the movement education and sport education models, in an effort to increase academic subject matter integration into their class. So a lot of it goes back to Joey Fight talking about we're not primers for other subjects. We really need, what Aaron says, is an identity to really stick with and say, this is what we're about. So the gist of the article, and what kind of got me is when in the abstract it says the very last thing is, it is our belief that the key to elevating the profession and maintaining and increasing support for physical education is its ability to promote physical activity. And this article, which we'll get into a little more, is worried about that physical activity piece. It says without physical activity and physical fitness as its main outcomes, PE increases its vulnerability to extinction as a standard part of the U.S. curriculum. So they're worried. They're worried that we don't understand that movement is first and foremost for us, and that we cannot worry about anything else but movement being the main piece of our teaching. What do you guys think about that?
Well, let me jump to that point. I'm going to get back to the other one real quick. That it's almost like we're a field with a very low self-esteem. And like Kim just put in the comment, we'll jump on anything. Please like us. Will you please like me? And that's what Joey talks about. That we'll help your kids do better in math. No, we're important because we're important, not because we can do that for them. So it's we do suffer from that, and education in general suffers from low self-esteem because everybody you went to school, therefore you're an expert and you know what schools need to do, and everyone wants to tell us what to do. And if we can, again, start to be a little more comfortable. Again, that's beyond our perspective. Anybody else want to touch on that? Go ahead. I was going to jump on the whole importance of physical activity before we get there.
I was just going to say, I think physical literacy is that term that kind of gives us that outcome. So we want our kids to be physically literate. So we are including movement, and then through that physical literacy, it's kind of like Dr. Dean Creelars was saying in his keynote in California. Kids are more likely to move. Kids are more likely to be active, and then kids are more likely to be fit because they have that confidence and competency in a variety of different movements, right? So that's our outcome. Like that helps build our mission statement, I think. And then all those other things. We're not a primer for other subjects, but we can't deny that being fit, that including movement in the learning process, it helps with all kinds of things. It helps grow new brain cells. It helps grow connections. It helps you balance your neurotransmitters. It helps all these things. Yes, we're not a primer for other subjects, but we can't also deny that being physically active helps everything.
And I completely agree with you, Jorge. And one of the things that we have to be careful of as a field is that most PE programs don't contribute a lot to the physical activity levels of kids. And if we're only getting kids active 38% of the time in a PE lesson, it's really hard to go to a principal and say, hey, you need to have more recess. You need to get classroom breaks, when a principal could turn around and say, get them more active in PE first. And right. I completely agree with you. If we can say, look, we can get kids active and we can be a part of that and we can play the game. I used to be adamant about we don't integrate academic content into PE. We don't do it. And obviously I've softened a little bit as I got older, but I think we need to do that to play the game. But in the back of my mind, I know I have PE objectives that are more important than their math objectives. Right. But we have to play the game to get them active and play. So those are the things that we have to do. I think that comes with some of our identity and becoming more comfortable with who we are. I was probably on the other end being stubborn early on.
I mean, going off of Aaron now, we expect in the regular ed classrooms them to start doing some movement activities. So if they're going to take some of our piece, I don't mind helping out a little bit. Like Jorge has great activities where if a kid gets eliminated, they come do either a math problem, check a sight word, do whatever, then they go right back in. I don't mind putting that in as like some quick, easy stuff. Just like in their class, they shouldn't mind doing a couple quick, easy brain boosts. But again, they're not teaching the physical education content, and I'm not teaching the general education content. I can incorporate it a little bit, and if you tell me what's going on, I have no problem adding a little bit. But I'm not doing it at the expense of what I need to do. I could exactly. put a little spin on it, but that's it. Alex.
So what Aaron said about you were against the academic content piece in physical education at one point, and age and wisdom and all that good stuff got you a little softer, right? That idea, I would have knocked heads with you in the past, because when I think of academic content, and this is where I get my thorn in my craw. because when I think of academic content, I think of health and fitness academic content. When you graduate 12th grade, I want you to be your own nutritionist and your own personal trainer. I do not want you to have somebody hold your hand and pay $69.99 and $99.99 to have somebody teach you how to do the things that I was supposed to, as your PE teacher, teach you. I need you to have fundamental concepts, what fitness looks like, on what health looks like. I need you to be able to walk into a grocery store and not buy hot Cheetos every single time and mix in broccoli and a carrot. And if I can do that through movement, not sit down in front of a whiteboard, but integrate those concepts into my movement activities and try to get that 38%, I think you said, try to get those percentages up. That's why I don't have time to teach math, science, blah, blah, blah. I will teach that if it comes into the course of action, into the course of my lesson, but that's not my focal point. My focal point is to help you stay active while you're learning about health and fitness concepts. And that to me is academic content. Physical literacy academic content.
True. Good point there.
Yeah, I completely agree with Alex. I mean, a lot of those core subjects, so to speak, fit really well into physical education. And so if it fits well in my lesson, I'm including it. But I'm not going and teaching that lesson in PE. But if it fits well into my content, like Aaron said, I have outcomes that I need to cover. So if it fits well in my content, then I'm teaching it.
Yeah, like angles are gonna come up very, very easily. I'm not going out of my way to do stuff like that. And when you talk about math and different things, there are some things that align really naturally with physical education. But it also goes to the point of, are we teaching physical education? Or are we teaching the whole child? And that's a whole nother conversation for another day. But the way our school system is set up, it's kind of like, all right, you're a social studies kid for 45 minutes. Then you're a language kid for 45 minutes. Then you're a math kid for 45 minutes. Then you're a phys ed kid for 45 minutes. And we've gotten away from the whole child, which, again, is not the best way to educate in my mind. But that's a whole other story. Aaron, what?
So I had a professional development today, and we did a nutrition activity, and it was a food label nutrition activity. So you do this relay race, you got a circuit going, so everybody's moving at the same time, and you're trying to build food labels. And one of the feedbacks that I got from one of the teachers was, man, this is a great way to integrate math. And although that teacher was 100% correct, the point was food labels, nutrition through movement. You need to know how to read food labels. I understand that there's math involved in there, and that will naturally come. But again, the point is, I need you to be able to walk into a store and understand what's in the food you're putting in your body. And so it's almost like we're beating our heads against the wall, trying to find a reason to justify ourselves. And Aaron said earlier, I loved it. We're kind of soft. We're not a squeaky wheel gets grease. Unfortunately, for the majority of our history, we're okay. Go ahead and pull your kid. Go ahead and have the assembly. Go ahead and do this and that. And we need to have we need to kind of get mad and say, you know what? The reason all your subject areas fit so well in our class is because we're talking about a mind-body connection, and you can't deny that. There's too much research out there now. Too much research.
And I think, Linda, what you said, Alex, is that life is integrated, basically. So it's really hard to, if they don't have the math skills, they can't do your lesson. And if a principal comes in and says, wow, look, you're doing math. Yeah, we're doing math, but look what else we're teaching. And let them start to see that we have value, that we have other things we're teaching, that yes, we realize they need to have those math skills early on, but they're not going to be able to do our thing. But we're taking those math skills and helping them apply them to the real world. And again, I agree with Justin. I think that's where we need to go with this whole real world, problem-based, all these kinds of things that they need to be doing. That it's not just, the world's not a 2 + 2 = 4. That's not how the world works. And problem-based stuff, I think, has a lot of potential.
Nice. All right. Aaron, was there something you want to talk about with physical movement?
I was going to say, and I'm a little hesitant to bring this up because I'm not much an expert. There was an article in Joker that just came out that Tyler Johnson wrote about the meaning standard and value, and this whole idea of making things meaningful for kids. Justin O'Connor in Australia, if you follow him on Twitter, it's Justin with an E, has stuff on this as well. And there's a book called No Sweat. If you've never read No Sweat, I encourage you to read it. It'll change the way you teach, because it's all about what adults do to be active. It's by Michelle Seeger, and she talks about motivating. Excuse me, I got allergies. It talks about motivating and that we need to. People need meaning in physical activity, and if they don't have that meaning, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they're extremely competent or not. If they don't find meaning in physical activity, they're not going to do it. And one of the things when Alex was talking made me think that all the things he's talking about, when they leave in the 12th grade, I want them to love activity and know that physical activity has some meaning in their life. Otherwise, they're not going to do it. And it's a great book. If you've never read it, read it. It's fascinating.
Yeah, that goes back to Andy Vasley's provocations.
Yeah. And
making that shit. I had a kid ask me the other day, why are we working on the volleyball set? And I went with the standard, at some point in time, aren't you going to be at like a backyard or something and you want to do it? And in my head, I'm thinking, is that why I'm spending all this time? And of course, I could say hand-eye coordination and strategy. But truthfully, if she's asking me why and doesn't see the relevance, then any explanation I give her is not good enough. I have to help her figure out the why, and it can't come out of my mouth. So ever since then, it started making me think that the TGFU is so much of a better way to approach it, because the why is right there within the game. Like, you're playing the game. That's why we're doing the game right now, and you don't have to wait till the end to get there. But that's something that stuck with me, and I'm still trying to figure that part out, is how do we get them to really understand the why? Because, my kids are going to look at me now, even my athletes. They're going to go, well, I play football. Well, that's great. If you're really lucky, you're going to play football till you're 32 years old. Then what are you going to do? And that's where everything else comes in. So I agree that the why is so important.
A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Y equals MX plus B. The last time I used either one of those pieces in my real life was when I was helping somebody do math. It doesn't apply to my life and the way I fit into it. Same thing we were talking about with the volleyball set. That doesn't apply to that person at that time. At the end of the day, that's a motor skill, and that's a fundamental piece that I need to help them understand and be proficient at. But when they graduate 12th grade, if they never touch a volleyball again, I'm not going to lose any sleep at night. I'm going to be 100% fine, because if I can help them find something to hold on to, something to keep them active throughout their lifetime, then that's what's the most important thing. There is a process, and I think that's where we come back to exactly what we're talking about. Physical education is now becoming physical literacy, because we need to define our process. We all have different philosophies in how we teach and how we manage. However, there are fundamental things that need to be in place to be proficient in said subject. Once those have been accomplished, forget them. I can remember a bunch of college tests where I crammed the night before, and after I took the test, I'm sorry, I don't remember a lot of that information. But if I can find one thing that I can attach myself to be healthy and active for a lifetime, then I can do that. I'm not a runner. I run, but some people just run all the time. I love and respect that. It's not for me. I like to play. I'm silly. That's kind of my style. So I think just what you were saying, Justin, that you're right on the money, man. You have to find something that you have to make it relatable. If I'm not held accountable and I don't care, I can assure you I'm not going to care when I leave your class.
Jorge?
Yeah, and that's why I was just going to say, and that's why I think, Justin was talking about TGFU, and I think that's why an approach like this is so important, because everybody has a different motivation, right? Everybody can find different things in different activities, and TGFU really really encourages that transfer from one game to the next in different categories. And so I think that goes right into physical literacy. So if you can find a meaning in one particular activity and it transfers well to another activity, that, volleyball might not be your thing, but another netball game might be your thing. You might find enjoyment out of that. And if that transfers to physical literacy, transfers to you leading an active life for the rest of your life, then that's a good thing.
I just want to make one. I want to make sure everybody noticed that Joe threw out Soa Katoa. If you don't know what that is, it's great. Good job, Joe. So, and the fact that I remember it was kind of sick. So, there's some evidence related to why your student asked about why we're doing volleyball, and you wouldn't throw this at them, but there's evidence that exposing kids to a variety of activities through physical education has impact later in life. So it's one of these things. This is an awful analogy, and I've tried. I use a better analogy now. I use a hose, but it's like a buckshot approach, where you just try and get to as many kids as you can. They'll find something that they like, and then they also understand that how they learn and other things as they go through their program. Where if you just focus on a few different things, they're not. If you just focus on 9 weeks of volleyball, they're not going to get to as much. We have to expose them to a variety. I mean, our kids know so many different activities than most kids because they're our kids. But if we don't expose them to them in physical education, they'll never be exposed to that. Never. And they'll never know what spike ball is. They'll never know what rhythms are and how to use them socially. They'll never know what volleyball is. They'll never know all these things. And if we can expose them to that, I think that's helping. And again, how you explain that to fifth graders is a little bit different. But it's just trying to helping everyone find something that they like.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a hard argument though to kids.
Oh yeah.
At some point in the future, you may use this.
I live with two of them. I know what that argument would never fly with.
So, like I said, the TGFU approach to me is the best that we could do out there, and saying, hey, you're using it in activities right now. We're moving. We're working on skills that are transferable. You're learning strategies. That's why we're doing it. All right.
I gotta piggyback off Aaron. I love the fact you brought spike ball because I had one of my good buddies, an adult, kept catching the ball. I'm trying to teach him spike ball, kept catching it, and he's upset and furious because he's a baseball player and he can't switch that gear because that's a normal reaction for him. And it's not that he's all of a sudden gonna fail. It's a transfer skill. I love it. Perfect.
All right, so let's talk about physically educated. So we had before physically educated, and I couldn't find a definition anywhere. Does anyone know the exact definition? What I saw is NASB said it's the frame of what a physically educated student should be able to do, but it didn't give me the definition. And then it tells me performs a variety of activities, is physically fit, participates regularly in physical activities, knows the implications and benefits from the involvement of the physical activities, and values physical activity. But there was no straight definition. Does that sound right to us?
That sounds right. This was my favorite, and I pulled a couple different ones, but this was my favorite. Sports and exercise taught in schools. Just the most broad, general thing you've ever heard.
Basically everything.
Yeah.
I think we have it in our book, but again, others have used it as well, that it's just the skills, knowledge, and attitude to be active for the rest of their lives. I mean, I've used that forever. I've heard Bain McCracken used that forever too. And it's some people say attitude, some people say disposition, something, it keeps changing. But in a nutshell, that's basically what it's been, is this, again, kind of what physical literacy was, but for all I know, that was stolen from physical literacy, and I've just stolen it from someone else. So who knows? Is that I think that's, in general, that's the gist of it. And from that, they used that as an umbrella to create, originally, help me out, was it 7 standards right at the beginning? Was it 8?
I think there were 7.
Kim, help us out. I think it was 7, and then I think it went down to 6, and now it's 5, right?
Yeah, it was.
They just keep
6
whittling it down.
7.
And then 5 now.
Yeah, and there was some extended discussion about combining fitness and physical activity, and I think one of the meetings I was at, they talked about making physical activity, not even having physical activity as one of the standards, because it was kind of the umbrella that was under that all of it was about. But obviously that didn't pan out. They kept I would argue that physical activity and fitness shouldn't be one and the same standard, but that's me.
Yeah, and I think the reason they put that under the umbrella, at least from my perspective, was the idea of we need our minutes per week as a school, not necessarily a subject. And so when you say physical activity, now it can just be moving and having fun, and it doesn't have to have the educational or literacy tag on it. So it can be during class, another class, a different class.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's kind of the impetus of what Justin was talking about, is that really nothing changed a lot other than they took educated out and put literate in. Is that your point, Justin?
Yeah, that was the point of the article that I wrote, and they were worried that it was going more from psychomotor to cognitive. That's what they were worried about in the article. I didn't find that. I went through their changes one by one. I don't know. I don't want this to take forever, but I went through every single thing that they were worried about, and I wasn't worried. There was only one part. There was one thing in there that I saw where they could change it, because they said in standard 4, which was the old one, which is standard 3 now, it says it demonstrates the knowledge and skills to achieve. So for demonstrates, I think that could be written in a test. Wouldn't that be demonstrating? But that would be up to the teacher.
Yeah, somebody tweeted that out recently. I don't know who it was, that the only thing that wasn't cognitive was number 1. The rest of them were all cognitive.
Yeah.
Although I would argue that value is not a cognitive thing; it's an affective thing. But that's what Tyler Johnson talks about in that Jopert article. If you can get hold of it, I think it's the one thing. If I had to pick, I would want kids to, if I could pick only one standard they were going to meet, I would rather them leave valuing physical activity than anything else, because I think that leads to some sustainability. Look at their skill level. Charles Barkley's skill level is not real good right now, and it was at one point. It's just not going to sustain, whereas your attitude and valuing it could. I mean, there's people that value it when they're 18, don't value it when they're 19, obviously, which leads to the whole physical literacy and being able to do that beyond physical education. What we do in the community and what we do elsewhere is huge.
But this is here. So standard 2, it says applies knowledge of concepts, principles, strategies, and tactics related to movement and performance. How can you apply something if you're not doing it?
I think Carrie was talking about how in the secondary standards that there's a lot of them that don't necessarily have to include movement. But to me, I mean, physical literacy kind of assumes psychomotor, doesn't it?
That's what I was thinking. I mean,
make an ass out of you, right?
But I guess it does. But think about this: is someone that walks every day, are they physically literate?
No, absolutely not.
But there's a pretty good argument. Why are they walking? Are they walking because it's a forced piece, or are they walking because they choose to? And if they're walking because they choose to, I would think that you might be able to ask them a very subjective question of, why do you like to walk? Well, I like to walk because of the way it makes me feel, because of, and if that's their answer, tough to argue with that.
Yeah, and I think this goes back to a public health perspective versus a physical education or whatever we're talking about, because I would think if I have a 65-year-old person and they walk every day for 4 miles, I would rather if they're not physically literate and they do that, I don't want them physically literate.
Now, if you throw in a couple,
does that make sense? Does that make sense?
But if you throw in a couple hills,
that's a good point. But I think if they were, go ahead. Sorry, Justin.
No, I was just gonna say. But suddenly, if you throw in hills, if you throw in a treadmill, if you throw in ice, if you throw in snow, now suddenly they're physically literate. Correct? Isn't that crossover?
Well, but also, I mean, if they want to do other things, then physical literacy will help them out. So if they only want to walk, okay, that's that one person. But say that person wants to take a hike, and now you're throwing in hills, like you said. Say that person wants to go on a bike ride, he has to know how to ride a bike. Say that person wants to go swimming, well, she has to know how to swim. So now we're talking about a variety of different activities that they'll feel confident in, and so that's the point of physical literacy, isn't it? So instead of just walking, that's all you can do is walk. Well, now you have all these options available to you.
But if you're motivated to do it and it has meaning for you and all you can do is walk, I think that's okay. I mean,
I do too.
Knowing what the number one the activities that adults do is walking, jogging, biking. Do you know what number 2 is? Gardening. When's the last time we put gardening in physical education?
Good point.
Some people do it, and there's people that do it and do it well.
Say.
But it's just one of the. I mentioned that in presentations, and people are like, "Wow, what a whack job this guy is." But it's there. I mean, it's one of these. If that's what we want to do, and think about the other health benefits of gardening and foods and all those types of things, it would be huge if we did that.
Boom, academic content. Right there. It's academic content and not academic content outside of our subject area. Health and fitness academic content. Gardening. That's going to help me stay healthy, fit, and active for a lifetime. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, we just got
Gary put fishing on there. That's great. That's awesome. And that
and outdoors.
Some of you may know him. I don't know his name. I have a doc student that was going to do some work with him, and then the doc student ended up falling through. But in Princeton, Jersey, that he does stretching with it. He talked about proper technique when you're hoeing and picking weeds and all these things that, as Kim said, it's in science. But think about, you talk about getting rid of your boxes, Justin. That would get rid of your boxes in a big way. I mean, there's science, there's math, there's reading, there's all kinds of things that have great potential. And I was really excited about it. And then the doc student ended up, he's actually a professional gardener for some big CEO now.
Nice.
That's all he does.
You said out of Princeton? It's like 10 minutes from my house.
I think it's Princeton, New Jersey is where he was. I can try and email the guy and see if he knows where the teacher is.
Yeah, definitely. Let me
Actually,
find out.
this is not a good thing, though. He was an ag teacher that was fired and put in or let go. That position was cut, so he just went into physical education and made gardening a part of the physical education department.
Interesting. I'd like to follow up on that a little bit. Yeah, we just got a gardening grant, so we will be starting a garden next year.
I think there's a lot of potential for
that. Now I'll have to try to take that into account and say, hey, what can we do in my class with that? And I mean, gardening, if you think about it, bending down, getting up, carrying things, walking across wherever.
Yeah, he found all the research on the health benefits of the activity that comes from gardening.
Fantastic.
I didn't buy it. I was like, there's no research on that. And he found it. And I'm like, okay, it's there.
Well, if there's the research, then let's find it. Let's see what's out there. Let's push that bad boy out to the community. I like it. All right. I think we've spent quite a long time tonight. Any closing thoughts or anything, Aaron, you want to get to? Because we love having you. Appreciate you spending your time with us. Anything you want to talk about before you go? No,
this is great. Every time I'm on a podcast, I have to make sure I say barking berries at some point. So I'm going to say barking berries now.
There you go.
If you're ever listening to the fundamental movement, I get it in every time.
Jorge?
Just thank you for having me on the show, on the podcast. I thought it was awesome. Great conversation. And Aaron, I'd love to have you on the Voxcast at some point. I got to throw that in there. Got to throw a plug in for the Voxcast. So at some point, I'd love to have you on there, continue the conversation.
Nice.
All right. I'd love to.
Alex?
I got to say, if you need any help with any of these resources or grants, obviously Focus Fitness, that's my umbrella right now. That's what I go through. But outside of that, stay happy, stay healthy, and always keep that smile on.
Nice. And the same thing I say every end of a Blab episode. Thank you for spending any amount of time with us, whether it was 2 minutes or the entire almost hour. Time is precious, something we will never get back. So the fact that you all hung out with us and talked phys ed for a while makes me very happy, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Like I said, Aaron, we got to do this again, sir.
All righty. Let me know.
Have a good one. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Woo! Boom. Kicked out.